Good morning, everyone. You are on the way to Berea with me. I wanted to do live stream, but I don't really know how the connection would go on this drive. So we're just gonna record it and then I'll upload it from the clinic. Good news. Other than the citations and some editing, the plasma electromagnetic sky (PEMS) paper is done. The PEMS paper contains basically so far the most complete description of HEGEME theory, which is the hollow, expanding, growing electromagnetic Earth, which technically is not hollow. Okay, so what I'm proposing is that the core, and I don't know if this is my theory alone, and I've definitely referenced different people who have come before and said that I'm combining, but basically what I'm proposing is that the core is actually made of kind of a viscous, spongy, mostly heavy water material, and that it is capturing the energy that is coming in through the poles, causing the Earth to both grow and expand and to produce water, and that's where the oceans of water inside the mantle are coming from. They're actually leaking upwards, and this is also providing the upward plume pressure. There isn't a convection happening, but the convection needs a mechanism, and electromagnetism and chemistry are providing my mechanism. So I'm not relying on ether the same way that Distinti is. I'll get back to Distinti in a second, but I'm providing a mechanism because electromagnetism does not require a medium for the transference of the waves. And essentially, when you talk about electromagnetic theory as a unified theory, electromagnetism is the medium. You no longer need a space-time. All the relativity gets boiled down to intrinsic redshift. There is a inherent property to light of its ability to dilate and age, and so many things become simplified. All right, now I don't go into everything. I do have in that paper, upon request from one of my people who've been editing, a glossary of terms. They're physics terms. Some of them are plasma cosmology terms. Some of them are electric universe terms. Some of them are relativity and quantum mechanics terms, and they're included. I'll probably duplicate that glossary in the magnetic universe paper. Now, the magnetic universe paper is outlined. I have not started work on it. I am considering either going right into it just to keep kind of the fire going on the hard science, or doing the handbag paper first, because the handbag glyph is being vastly misinterpreted. And because this is, again, when you have a science that does not explain things well, it leaves holes, and those holes allow other people to come in with quackadoodle theories, and without any hard evidence, without any research. I mean, this paper I'm releasing has 200 footnotes and citations, okay? But people, they can come out and they can just say anything, and they can presuppose cosmologies that don't really have any physical basis, and whatever cosmology we use to replace Big Bang and whatever cosmogony we use to replace plate tectonics and accretion theory, they have to cover the facts. And when you leave out the facts, that's what leads to basically bunk theories. So, in the paper, I focus on the terms that I could possibly get to, and next time I will add more in the magnetic universe paper. So I don't know when I'll do that paper, but this handbag phenomena really bothers me, because what's happening is people are automatically jumping to ancient aliens. They go, that it's a power source that's been carried around. They're taking the glyphs to be literal, ignoring the strange straight arm that's coming off, and they're saying that this means that Viracochas went around the world and powered. Now, is that possible? Yes, but it's also one of those unprovable things. Unless you can find me an ancient battery of that size, and not a Baghdad battery, I mean, we know the ancients had electricity. We know that they knew about it. They did not have an electrical grid. That's another thing that's important for people to know. There's no proof that they used it for much more than some industrial capacity and for lighting with crook tubes made with glass, which is actually not that hard to do. It's not a very advanced product, is what I mean. But there's no, evidence that they had wires everywhere and that they were using cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So for people to jump to Atlantean technology, proposed Atlantean technologies, or ancient aliens, it just shows that modern archaeology has a real problem on its hand when they try to sweep what are called OOP arts underneath the rug, right? And what EPEMC theory does is it eliminates the ability to just sweep things under the rug that needs to be explained with a simple cosmology, right? Now, if the plasma cosmologists are unwilling to work with the EU people, or unwilling to work with Atlantologists who are unwilling to work with diffusionologists, because the diffusion archaeologists don't want to be lumped together with the Atlantologists, then we've got to create a cohesive story and mechanism. Now, the only way to explain PEMS, though, was to give the HEGEME theory, and that's why I took the time in the paper to explain the entire thing. And in particular, I wrap it together in the concept of the spheres of heaven and the spheres of earth. So, really, it's a beautiful paper. I hope that you guys really love it and read it. And I also want to put a shout out for the book I'm reading, Dave Talbot's The Saturn Myth. I'm going to eventually have to do a whole EU episode with Madame Catherine just on the Saturn Myth when I finally finish the book. It is a book that I definitely recommend. The only cheap way to get it is to go to stickmanonstone.com and order it there. They must be printing them on their own, because it's not a book it wasn't successful like Worlds in Collision, and so they didn't keep printing it. So for you to get an original is really difficult. I'm going to talk to the guy from Stickman on Stone, see if he can't get a hold of and start reproducing some of these the Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett texts, and see if we can't get more of these kinds of esoteric texts that haven't been printed in a while done at the same great price. Now, Saturn Myth isn't cheap, but it's not super expensive, because you'll see on Amazon people are trying to sell them for $200 and stuff. So don't buy those. Get the one from stickmanonstone.com. What else is going on in the world of Electric Universe updates? Oh, well, so Ben Davidson is continuing. He's really firing on all engines. I was poking him a lot. And now he's really producing, and things are going very well there. And at the same time, Descenti is also kind of like firing on all engines. It's nice to see, because there's a lot of great news that has come about. Aside from the proof that Redshift is not what they thought it was, coming the same day that they show, and both of these articles are back to back on the EU Gateway. That episode of Suspicious Observers was Thursday, I think, last Thursday. You should definitely watch it. But they proved using the Gaia spacecraft that there is all this. They use the MMS program, that all sorts of magnetic reconnection, Birkeland current activity. You'll see in my paper, magnetic reconnection is defined, and you're looking at it, you're going, it's got currents. It's all about currents. But anyways, that's happening right outside the Earth's magnetosphere. There's an interaction with the solar plasma wind. Go to the EU Gateway and watch the videos that are uploaded there or embedded there, so that you can actually see what those interactions look like. They're pretty trippy, to not lying. I mean, it's very fractal, very non-linear, it seems like to me. That might mean, hey, multi-dimension people, it might mean that there's actually some higher dimension fourth, fifth, sixth dimension mathematics going on there that is needed to explain. I don't know. I don't do nonlinear mathematics. About the extent of my knowledge is vector and integral calculus and regular old linear algebra. I'm actually learning from Distinti right now all about the differences between the legacy algebra and geometric algebra, and then the problems of geometric algebra. Now let me break that down. Okay, this is a big deal. I want you to know those two papers that I just mentioned are important. The one on Gaia and one on NMS and the redshift issues. Those are important. However, this issue is really important. I've never seen anybody who is an individual potential genius of the same way. I know that there's a large number of angry photographer, Ken Wheeler fans out there who think he's an absolute genius. Okay, maybe he is. Irony, he went to my college, by the way. But Ken Wheeler's book is unintelligible. It is formatted in such a way that it hurts my brain. I understand that maybe there are people out there whose brains already work kind of strange and that it makes sense, but the book is completely unprofessional as far as a textbook would go. It is unintelligible as a subject. If I had the inkling that Ken had much more to say than the speed of light is the rate of induction through the medium, then I would probably go back and edit it myself. And I'll credit him for anything. Anytime I mention that the speed of light is, so like in the magnetic universe, he's going to get a mention. There's a section devoted to Ken Wheeler's treatment of the photon. However, I don't really consider him a savant. To me, a man who goes out, he's an engineer, he's got a full-time job, and he goes out and he finds a problem. In this case, the paradoxes of Faraday and Maxwell and the limitations of those equations. And then he creates a thesis for everyone to use, an improved mathematical system and improved equations that better fit the curve, right? They're not perfect, of course. Nothing in science, so you got to get used to this. Nothing in science models everything perfectly. So, but Distinti has fixed Faraday. And on top of that, then he sees a new problem. That the imaginary number is undefined. I mean, it's defined, but it's not defined by anything real. Just saying the imaginary number is the square root of 1 is like saying the square root of 1 is the imaginary number. That's not really a definition because it's a circular definition. And any circular argument in Western philosophy is precluded, right? Because it's not Eastern sciences. So you can't say the yin turns the yang and that's how the yang defines the yin. You can't do that. In Western science and mathematics, you have to have an entire way of going through it. Well, there's no way to actually there's no scalars that you can multiply by each other, by itself, and end up with a negative number. However, in his latest video, which you have got to see, and I will link it in the comments below, he goes through and proves how legacy algebra and geometric algebra do not yield a solution for the square root of -1, and his vortex algebra does. And I did the math myself with him, and it does. It works. I told Arwen, because before we were watching the previous video he'd done, and it wasn't well explained, and nobody can explain everything perfectly. Like, this video isn't perfect. There's no way to make perfect content. There's only the next way of explaining things as it's unfolding for the person and for you at the same time. Well, he made a video. It wasn't satisfactory to a great many comments. There were people saying, oh, this has already been done. This is geometric algebra, blah, blah, blah. So he sat through and he actually showed the solutions for each of the three over time. It was a great video. And it really caught you. Because my wife was going, is this real? Like, is this guy for real? And I was like, I don't know. My school is paying him $50 a month. I'd like to know if he's real, So he does the mathematics. I do the mathematics with him. I'm following the video, doing the math. I have yet to sit and read his paper, and I feel really bad about it because, this guy's really worked hard on his vortex algebra paper. If you want access to his paper, you have to be a Patreon. and it's a $20 a month thing. However, all of his old papers are on the EU Gateway. So if you go to the EU Gateway and you want to see the new electromagnetism, you can look for NE.pdf or NEthesis.pdf. NEthesis.pdf is the one that he really truly released to the world. NE.pdf is really kind of an introduction as to why electromagnetism has failed and how he has new electromagnetism. So this vortex algebra, this is the thing that's killing me, because the same, like, next day or the following day, like Friday or Saturday, Ben Davidson releases a video discussing the Musca sheet. And if you go to, again, the EU Gateway and you type in Musca, M-U-S-C-A, or you just type in plasma sheet, you'll find a couple of references. And this sheet, okay, it's not exactly flat, but it is basically flat, and it's electrical current in space. This is, again, another instance of NASA quietly admitting that there is electric charge separation in space via plasma. But how are we going to solve what's really happening in there with geometric algebra, which is asserting that if you cross product a vector going in the x direction with a vector going in the y direction, that you get a vector in the z direction? Well, how are you going to get, okay, if you multiply a length by a width, do you get another length? No, of course not. You get an area. So if you multiply a vector by a vector, you should get a matrix of area, basically. And so what he shows in that video is how you can actually produce something that if you then, now you get the square root, you take the square root of that and you end up with a definition of -1. It's unreal. I mean, it is just great. And it's also, by the way, according to him, now I'm not a math historian, but there so far has never been vector division, and now he has introduced a mechanism for it. Somebody in the Distinti community has raised the issue of, is it going to be scalable and is it going to be programmable? You know, considering the geometric algebra, one of its great things is it's highly scalable, so we can go to many dimensions and get results. I don't know the answer to that yet. It's so new, guys. We're talking bleeding edge mathematics and engineering theory here. I mean, Distinti is a 30-year engineer, so like Donald Scott, very trustworthy source. I definitely recommend watching the videos, and look through the paper if you're so inclined to read. Really, I mean, it's not pretty mathematics. It's not like reading elegant calculus or supersymmetry or something. This is which would, to me, all looks like gibberish. This doesn't look like gibberish, but it's also the kind of stuff that puts you to sleep. If you're not a mathematician, you're just staring at it. So that's why I recommend the videos. However, getting back to the Musca sheet, my immediate response to the video, and you can see it in the comments on that video of his, is this could be used to actually calculate all of the electric current, and orthogonal to that, the magnetic vectors, and to obtain the flux. Because the real question is, what is the sheet doing there, and why is it able to sustain itself? Now, in Birkeland current theory, we have the idea of these sheaths, right? These W sheaths, which are also called double layers, that can wrap around each other and basically protect themselves. And that's intrinsic to the need, to the behavior of celestial spheres, including the Earth, as you will see in my paper. And it's intrinsic to the behavior of the plasmas, whether they're in vacuum, air, or in the space, which is not exactly a vacuum now, we know. So the question is, what is the Musca sheet doing there? Why is it flat? Why isn't it tubular? Or why isn't it writhing? Why isn't it moving around with Markland convection? It's a very fascinating thing. Are we going to find massive amounts of these plasma sheaths in all sorts of places? What if there's one that's relatively close-ish to the sun? If indeed Gaia measurements are correct, you know they're not going to admit that redshift has been wrong for the last 50 years, ever since Halton Arp explained. They're going to use Gaia, and then they're going to say, well, for that, we need to send another craft to verify Gaia. So, but as far as I'm concerned, although Sirius is probably, because the light is probably younger, the redshift there is probably well measured, it may not be quite 4 light years. What if Sirius is only 1.8 light years away? I mean, that's still a huge distance. I mean, I saw 1 light year was like 6 trillion miles, so we're not talking a small distance. However, what if humanity could plan out a way to harvest these plasma sheaths, right? We establish a moon base, and we harvest what we have here in the local solar system, and then we reach further and further out. We make plans to send out basically a tether, right? An electrode, or at least something that's going to kind of siphon, right? It's like basically what looks like a Stargate, out to one of those sheets, and then boom, just would it all come at once? I mean, what's the flux going on here? Would it come a little bit at a time? Would it be something we could sustain for a long while? Would we need to direct it to the sun? Would we be able to use it to power back up Jupiter or Saturn? I don't know. I honestly don't know what the practical use is. I like the title of one of the articles that I found. It was like, plasma sheets are where the action is. And this is 2012, NASA wrote that. I'm going, well, not yet, there's not action, but it's an interesting subject to say the least. And then to say the most, this vortex algebra might be usable to discover the true value of these electric sheets in space. I mean, there's all sorts of, there's tons of possibilities. Most of our applications that we have, like take these coaxial cables that are overhead here, most of those can be modeled using basic algebra or geometric algebra. And although square root of -1 is a cheat, it is after all a good cheat. Like it's a useful cheat. It works. So long as you can program it and you can get good models for your electromagnetic waves, it's no big deal. However, let's say that the structured atom people are correct, and that atoms are actually not randomly, made in the center of the atom, but they're actually platonic solids, right? And then you can eliminate the neutron, and it's actually just the way that electrons and protons are arranging themselves. For that, go to structuredatom.com, I think. Just Google structured atom or SAM theory. Okay, so if that's correct, is it possible for us to use lasers to send a signal? And that signal is basically a quantum entanglement that instigates the movement of collections of charge. We would need to try this on Earth first, because here is a place where charge is constantly moving around, constantly shifting and concentrating. It may not concentrate to the levels that we're talking about in the cosmic level, but would we be able to send 2 signals to 2 celestial objects that are near enough to each other to instigate charge movement from one object to the other, because there's a potential difference, to break down the permittivity of free space, and to arc electricity from, say, an asteroid to another asteroid, or from an asteroid to a passing comet, and then the comet can bring it to us, and then from the comet to the moon. I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a way, is what I'm saying. There's got to be a way of wireless power transfer, and yet we know there's already wireless power transfer possible in the Earth, and we haven't even done that. So I don't know if maybe I'm speculating ahead, but my point would be that burning fuel to get energy is, as Tesla said, it's barbaric, and it's certainly not going to get us to the stars. DeCinti personally believes that we've got to go faster than the speed of light, and that the only way to do that is with his ethereal mechanics. I don't know. I'm not on board with the ethereal mechanics yet. I'm not really big on I'm just going to say it, made up particles. I mean, I say it's made up because it's never been found. So, you know, the work he's done beyond new electromagnetism and beyond vortex algebra, I can't personally vouch for. I'm impressed with his theory of Earth crust collapse. That's why it's a part of the expanding Earth aspect. However, I can't personally vouch for anything else, and I can't vouch all the way for Professor Konstantin Mayel's theory. That's MEYL, of neutrinos being trapped in the Earth. That's why I say in the paper I don't know what kind of water it is. It's like some kind of heavy water or structured water, which is Gerald Pollack. It's something that is able to capture cosmic rays. Is it neutrinos? I don't know. I'll tell you this. I watched another video as Gerald Moore, and he was showing very distinctly, like there was an explosion. I think it was the Crab Nebula, and like immediately following, there was a huge spike in Earth's temperature. Now that could be a total coincidence, right? It could have been 100 supernovas that we don't know about from that time period. And also, he's using redshift that has been disproven. But there was, I think, according to Mayel, a correlation between a supernova event that the Chinese observed and where it was bright for days and massive earthquakes. So is it possible that the Earth is being bombarded by these neutrinos, pulled into the poles? I think so. I call that the electrothermal vine. And although I won't go off and copyright that term, I'll let you know it's originating with me, the electrothermal vine. And is it possible that these cosmic rays are fueling, and that merely the medium that this Senti's looking for is actually already been found? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how he's responding to himself, because now that he's created vortex algebra, maybe he goes back and the problems he found still with electromagnetic theory that was causing him to create another ether theory, perhaps he'll end up actually going back and retracting a lot of those works. I certainly am not real big on the names, some of the names that he's given to his ether particles. But my point is they haven't been found at all. I already don't like a great number of things, these machos and wimps and you know, just a whole zoo of particles that are very obviously really related to each other. Quarks is about as esoteric as I like to get. You know, quarks, bosons, leptons, baryons, that's pretty much the extent of the zoo that I'm willing to accept right now, because I'm really all about this structured atom and reducing things down to a proton and electron. Now, is it possible that inside the proton there's an interaction of other polar particles and the so-called strong force? Yes, but the strong force then is just electromagnetism happening at a quark level rather than happening at a subatomic level, or how would you say, in between an atom and a quark. So I'm just not into a lot of invention of brand new particles when we haven't even discovered why we're finding all these particles, and we haven't simplified. We're at that nexus place. It's kind of like a martial artist who is in his second year of study. He kind of knows some stuff, but he doesn't really know anything. And so, you know, if he went to get in a fight, he would be totally beat up because he would become despondent. Well, people are beginning to get despondent because the cosmology is not working, right? The Big Bang stuff makes no sense. They're claiming to find 10,000 black holes in the center of the Milky Way, and we're all sitting there going, but you said it was one giant black hole, you know, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous theory that they're finding all these black holes, and now they want to invent a fifth force. It's all going, you know, into the crazy direction. That's why I created the EPEMC. And what I'm so excited about the plasma electromagnetic sky paper is not that I created, you understand, right? I did not create PEMS theory, but I am explaining PEMS theory as it's relating to the HEGEME, right? And the HEGEME is an absolutely vital understanding for how plate tectonics works. Plate tectonics is not a complete theory, right? It is a theory where there is subduction, yes, but there's not enough subduction to cover how much rifting is going on. And if you're setting the value of the growing Earth to 0, calling it an error, but you're getting that error every year, and now your plates are changing direction, you've got a problem with your plate tectonic theory. Now, I'm not getting rid of subduction. There's plenty of evidence for subduction. I don't know why there are people that guy just ran red. I could have actually been hit just now, but naturally I stopped instead of just going, real fast. I don't know why people think that in order to have a growing Earth and an expanding Earth, you need to get rid of plate tectonics. Actually, if anything, it explains all the more why plate tectonics works, because there's more space for these crusts to move around. The imagery I use in the paper is that, like slag, when you have slag on top of so slag has a higher melting point, so it floats on top of the molten steel below. Well, it's just like in the mantle, right? So the slag is the crust that we're having here, and it's performing like a membrane. And this definition of membrane is it's a lot less organic, but it is actually organic. If you really think about it, within a very short distance, let's say under this soil, probably within 3 or 4 feet is bedrock. So you got rock, and you have a very short period of like a very, very thin layer of something that can grow things, and then you have atmosphere. And that kind of sudden shift creates a massive differential of charge and behavior of chemistry, of which will obviously seed life. So a really important thing, right? If we want to generate energy, we've talked about this, you need to have a differential of not just potential, but of energy types. And so to have that differential of energy types, you need charge, basically like charged spheres. And these spheres create that difference. Well, the crust here is the membrane. Well, on a bigger layer between the asthenosphere and the atmosphere, the crust is behaving as a membrane from the HEGEME to the PEMS. All right? As above, so below. Well, if it's as above, so below, you need one thing powering that, and that is not gravity, because gravity is weak. It is electricity. Electricity is what's powering it, and that's what's creating the magnetic dynamo. And clearly the changes in our climate are reflecting changes in the magnetosphere of Earth. Now, is that coming because there's a change in the solar electric circuit, or what I call the solar system circuit? Possibly. Is it coming because of the galactic electric circuit is changing? Possibly. We are moving through a field. If you have a charged body, a polar body moving through the medium of space, right? If it's moving through space, there's a velocity there, so there's already momentum and angular momentum, but there's also induction, because as it rotates, the magnetosphere is going to be rotating, so it's generating electricity, and then that electricity is moving, that is inducting, and so there is an inductive relationship with the solar system, and then the solar system has an inductive relationship with the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is already moving, and as it moves closer to Andromeda, it's not happening tomorrow, but it's still happening pretty fast. We're moving very, very quickly towards Andromeda. There will be potentially exponential changes. And what I'm postulating is that the Earth and its place in all that is only guaranteed to house life because the PEMS itself provides a mechanism of basically spacing, orbital shells, like quanta, just like in the atom, like we say with the electrons. And that, and the way that the Earth spins and the magnetosphere is thrown off and the plasmasphere that's interacting with it, the so-called ionosphere, all of those things are what provide the functions for life. It takes away, don't you see, it takes away all of the need to go, oh, well, how lucky it is, how coincidental, how unusual. It's not unusual. It is a matter of just having enough plasmasphere layers of different chemistry, and of course having water to enable us to actually put into place a system that can self-sustain itself as it shifts from one solar body to another, reasonably speaking. Even if we left the sun and it was totally dead, and when we found another star, it'd find its place, let's say it was Sirius, and then it would start seeding life again, because it is a natural property of the HEGEME and the PEMS in their way that they work together. Ultimately, the PEMS becomes part of the HEGEME. So the HEGEME is the bigger theory, and above that is the EPEMC theory. I'm finally at Berea, so I'm going to wrap this video up. Please like, share, subscribe. Talk with me below about what you think. Do you think it's all bunk? That's fine. I would prefer you read the paper and really got a grasp of it before you made such a decision. But the Unboxing Atlantis is still out there. It has the beginnings. It has the simplified version of the HEGEME. If you want to read that first and then, kind of like wade into, it's totally understandable. The paper will be available either today or tomorrow. I will have my assistant on it. She'll be editing and citing the paper all day long. So look for it. It probably will be released today. And I hope that you have a good day. If you're having allergies, I understand. It is okay, right? For sometimes people, when they join an alternative viewpoint, like healthcare in this case, they think they got to go whole hog. I am telling you, it is okay if you have to take an anti-inflammatory. I did, right? I had acupuncture first thing in the morning because my throat was crazy and there was stuff coming all out of my head. And I still use anti-inflammatory, and you can use, allergy, over-the-counter allergy medications. The point is to not be on it all the time. If you're at the point where you're needing shots and stuff, you got to do something different, okay? Because you're killing your liver. But if you do what you need to be comfortable and able to function throughout the day. I want to make that clear. The type of paradigm that I teach as far as Chinese medicine and science is concerned is that what works is what matters, right? It's the art of war. What works is what matters. Have your ideals later. First, make sure that your principles conform to nature. And I think I'll end it on that.